Hello, and welcome to A Fistful of Dice. My name is Matt. Today, we're going to be looking at the Dungeon Master's Guide for D&D 5th Edition. That's right, the Holy Trinity is complete. All 3 books have been released. Well, if you're fortunate enough to live nearby a Wizards Play Network store, then you now are able to purchase the Dungeon Master's Guide. Everybody else has to wait a couple weeks, But I managed to snag a copy early from my local gaming store, and I've been really happy with this so far. I've flipped through it a couple times, and there have been several sections, such as the optional rules and the magic items, that I've read through pretty thoroughly. So I feel like I've familiarized myself with it enough where I can give you guys a good in-depth review. So we're going to do that now. Okay, so here's the Dungeon Master's Guide. It has the same sort of glossy cover as the previous 2 books, as well as the sort of matte area back here, which gives it a little bit of nice sort of texture to it. So if you're sitting there holding the book in your hand at the table, you have this nice sort of matte grip for your hand. And it's laid out really nicely too. It's really easy to flip to what you want, and I feel like there's a good mixture of stuff in here. You have stuff, optional rules for you to add into the game to make 5th edition the system that you want it to be. They talked a lot about, in the playtest, making this system a very modular system, being able to add in lots of optional rules and things like that to really make it your Dungeons & Dragons game, the game you want to run, And in addition to that, there's a lot in this book that is sort of similar to Pathfinder's Game Mastery Guide. Things to inspire you. Things like roll tables and, tips and tricks for dungeon mastering. There's a lot in this book that is meta. It's how to keep your table together. What you can do at your table to speed up combat, to make the game easier, handling new players, handling problem players, stuff like that. So they really have covered all fronts with this book. It's not just rules. It's not just random roll tables, though there is a lot of that. But there's also a lot of, dungeon mastering outside of the game as well. So the first thing that you get is talking about creating a world or using a campaign world and making it your own. And they talk a lot about gods and making maps and cities and towns, commerce and currency, creating factions for your world and how to make sure that they are, sort of presences in your world. They talk a lot about magic. And in here, you'll see that there are optional rules for a lot of these things. So like renown, optional rules for gaining renown in within a faction or within an organization. They also have some great tips here for new dungeon masters. They have a section creating a campaign, and the first tip is start small. And it's basically what I've talked a lot about is the bottom-up world building, starting with a single location and branching out from there, letting the world sort of develop organically as the players explore it, and you can discover it together. So, and then talking about events and story, story arc and things like that, different plot hooks and adventure ideas for you and your players, talking about the different tiers of play, so what level to start at and sort of what the different levels mean within the game, being level 10, you're a hero of the realm, that sort of thing. Then they talk about the different genres, because, D&D is medieval fantasy, but within that there's a lot of different subgenres, so, you have your sword and sorcery, your epic fantasy, your mythic fantasy, and things like that. And they also talk about, doing sort of Call of Cthulhu type campaigns, and sort of like ancient feudal Japan sort of styled campaigns, and they talk about adding sci-fi into your campaign and stuff like that. So it's really opening the game up and talking about using the rule system versatile, you know, not just tying it to one sort of genre or style of campaign world or anything like that. So, and then they go from there. They sort of go bigger, and they talk about the multiverse, talking about the different planes and how the planes sort of affect things. And for each of these planes, they talk about, you know, the Feywild, the Shadowfell, the Astral Plane, Mount Celestia, you know, all these places. They have optional rules that you can add into the game to really sort of flavor the plane that you're in. They have a really awesome map here of the planes, so the elemental planes. Now, in part 2 of the book, Master of Adventure, this is about the small scale stuff. You know, this thing here was big world events, creating a world, creating a multiverse, you know, magic levels and things like that. Now we're looking at delving into dungeons, doing quests, doing missions. What kind of story do you want to run? You know, mysteries and dungeon delving and things like that. And they also talk about encounter building, how to create interesting encounters, using terrain and things like that. Different features that can really sort of make the encounters more memorable and exciting for your players. Then they talk about creating non-player characters. They have a really cool system for creating easy non-player characters, you know, randomly rolling features and mannerisms and stuff to really kind of make them unique and set them apart. There's a huge section on villains here and different villainous motivations. In addition, this book also has some player options. You know, you have the Cleric Death Domain and the Paladin Oathbreaker archetypes, so that's pretty cool. Here we're talking about environments, describing things, creating maps, setting the scene for your players. And there's also lots of rules for different hazards and terrain types. And they have rules here in there for using those things. Talking about wilderness campaigns, you know, City Builder. This is a really cool random roll table for building towns and cities. Underwater combat. This is awesome stuff. They have, you know, ships and different things that you can buy and how to repair them, how many crew members you need. They have optional rules for crew loyalty, which is super awesome. I'm going to be using that in my Spelljammer campaign for sure. Traps. Love the trap section. They give you lots of example traps and also tell you how easy it is to create your own. Now, this is kind of a cool... I like this section. The Between Adventures section. This is something I don't think enough DMs or DM resources talk about. What your players can do between adventures. You know, instead of saying, well, a few months have passed and it's now time for a new adventure, what are your players up to? This is where... a lot of, like, people are kind of upset because in 5th edition, there is no magical currency. You can't just walk into a store and buy a +1 longsword. They've really kind of reined that in because 3rd edition kind of became a, you know, this magical economy type situation where you're saving up gold to buy these magical items. Well, now you save up your gold and you can do things like buy a ship or buy a business, buy a stronghold, build a stronghold, really investing your money in the world and shaping the world as opposed to making the strongest character possible, making your character a presence within the world because they can own a business, they can build a castle, they can, you know, create a town, things like this. So that's really, really cool stuff. Now, here's my favorite chapter, Treasure. This is exactly the kind of stuff that I'm looking for here. This is rolling random treasure based on level, based on value. So really cool here. These tables are the origin of magical items, which is really, really cool. I like that, giving magical items some unique flavor. You know, it's not just a +1 longsword. It's a +1 longsword that was created for a hero in ancient times, you know? Now we've got these magical items. There are a ton of magical items. It is insane how many magical items they put in here. And classic magical items that have been around since original D&D. You know, you've got the Apparatus of Qualish. This is one of my favorite D&D items here. Lots of awesome cursed items, sentient items, artifacts. Everything just has such a rich flavor to it. Nothing feels generic or mundane as far as these magical items go, and I'm so excited to throw a bunch of these at my players. They feel worthwhile, they feel more valuable and more exciting because there isn't a way to walk into a shop and just buy these items. Obviously, you know, you can have a way to buy magical items in your game, but the rules kind of go against that a little bit. They place a lot more worth and value on the magical items that go beyond gold. Now you get to the rules section in part 3, and this is going to be all of the optional rules, and also going more in depth on how the rules work and how you can use them as a dungeon master. It talks about the idea of adding a skill proficiency to a different ability. So, like an example they give is if you're doing an athletics check to swim and you're swimming across like a wide sea or something, you can, even though athletics is tied to strength, the DM can make the call to make a constitution check to see if you can swim that far, but also add your athletics proficiency because, you know, it applies to swimming. So that's sort of an interesting idea. It's something I hadn't really thought of. They go into the advantage and disadvantage system, obviously, talking about different ways to use it, different ways to apply it. Inspiration, they have some optional rules for inspiration, which is great. Lots of different rules for movement and combat. They have stuff like flanking in here, combat maneuvers like overrunning and charging and things like that. They've got tips for tracking HP and initiative. They have several really cool optional initiative tracking methods, which I'm eager to try out. They have rules for using miniatures, which I know a lot of people have been wondering about that. Here's all that stuff. So if you want to get tactical in your game, the Dungeon Master Guide is where you can do that. All the, you know, flanking rules and movement rules are all in there. They have rules for chases, siege equipment. So awesome. Poison, disease. This is super awesome. They have madness rules. You know, losing your sanity like in Call of Cthulhu. They actually have the idea to add in ability scores. So the example they give is adding in a sanity and an honor ability score. So it's the you know, the normal strength, dex, constitution, you know, that stuff, adding ability scores to that to fit your campaign. So if you're running a horror campaign, everybody has a sanity score. If you're running like a samurai campaign, everyone has an honor score. Pretty cool stuff. They also have stuff about building races and building monsters, which is great. They have dungeon dressings, and all of this stuff is random roll tables for building a dungeon, which I'm so excited to try out. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I love stuff like that. They have lists of monsters by CR, which is great. And then this is really awesome. I've never seen this before. They have sample maps back here that you can use in your game and also kind of take inspiration from. So they have like a 3-dimensional map over here with the floors sort of laid out for this windmill. They've got a traditional dungeon map. They've got like a cavern map and then city and town maps. Overall, I'm really happy with the Dungeon Master's Guide. I think that, you know, they held this back a month so they could make sure that it was as good as it can be, and I really think it shows. The quality in here is great. Lots of awesome stuff for Dungeon Masters to use, not just of 5th edition, but really of any game, you know. Lots of great tips in here. I'd say it's up there, if not quite on par with the Pathfinder Game Mastery Guide, just because the Game Mastery Guide is a little less system-specific than this is. But still really awesome, great tips and tricks for game masters of all kinds. And if you are DMing 5th edition and you're wanting to take your game to the next level and add in lots of fun options and make a really, truly unique campaign and make things easier on yourself, definitely check out the DMG. It is awesome. I've been really happy with it. So can't wait to delve into this further and use some of this stuff that's in here. So anyway, guys, that's going to be it for me. Take care and happy gaming all.